for coming. It's basically our second meetup in Booxware. We're holding it. I will not get you very bored. It's just a couple of words about us. So it's a Booxware, part of Tipico company. Today we will have again our second meetup about different topic. Software developer in test. Who's that? We will do it by us. This time we don't have external presenter. We have our colleague, our friend Tymofii, and he will present the topic. So try to enjoy. I hope it will be, and as much questions as appreciated.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for greetings. So first I'd like to, of course, introduce myself, and I want you probably want to know me a bit better, and I also want to learn about you. So my name is Tim. Yeah, like the full name is like Tymofii. It's a Ukrainian name. Like my experience is majorly with Java technologies, and it's overall 10 years in industry, and I'm currently working in a Booxware. I think I'm working as a software developer in test, and so basically partially this presentation is going to be also about me, about my experience and how I reached this I think this title. Yeah, there's also my personal email, my blog. I do not post there too often, so you probably yeah, but still there are some interesting things there. Yeah, so just to learn about you a bit. So how many do we have developers here? Okay, and the QAs. Okay, the rest are managers. I probably yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah. Okay. But I think this is and that's basically about you know, about uniting between like the point of union between developer and a QA, and this is basically being like a half-blood person is something what I'm going to tell you about. Yeah, so we'll talk first about the QA engineer evolution, like about the career evolution itself. Then we'll have some real like a practical example. We'll see how the software developer in test can develop tests and can support them. And then we'll just try to resume how to summarize and try to answer who's that, basically, who's this guy, software developer in test. Yeah, so let's first talk about the career. And you know, when I'm repeating a bit myself, but I'm from Ukraine, and my first company I joined was called really quite accordingly Soft Ukraine. And I really, once I joined there, I could hardly imagine what is awaiting for me there, what is really awaiting for me there. Yeah, I knew like I'm gonna test something, and but how this process is gonna look like and what the details are waiting for me, I didn't know that at all. So. And basically, the majority of my colleagues thought the same. So everyone considered the QA quality assurance engineer position like something as a start. So someone was targeting to become a developer. Then someone was going to be a business analyst or a manager, or someone was going to become a scrum master. But nobody really treated the QA position as some persistent role in IT, yeah, and information technology as is. Yeah. So this was looking like 10 years back. This was not a very popular position, and let's just try to remember how was it. Yeah. So I'm actually from the outsourcing world. So Booxware maybe is one of the first companies, real product companies I was working in, and in outsource, but 10 years that was the actual state of many companies. There was several development teams, and there was also QA central team. And in many cases, especially in outsourcing, there was a development team in one. They were physically located in different rooms, and what is worse, could be worse than that, they were even could be located in different countries, and then they were communicating only via some backtracking system, and that's all. And basically, there was always a wall between them. But then suddenly Agile came in, and unfortunately the habit of work, the approach of communication hasn't been changed at all. And regardless of the now QA central teams were disassembled, and the QA as a person was sitting now physically in the same room with developers, still the communication was going through the same backtracking system, and nothing has changed majorly. Yeah. So basically, with the Scrum, like how sprint usually could start that, yeah, requirements are clear, and QA were like that was the only place where QA and developers were together, really. And then after some communication to a business, after everyone understood what more or less understood, okay, what they are going to develop, basically developers were starting doing their stuff. They were trying to design the APIs. They were modeling the data structure. Then they are designing some services, and in order to basically reach the business goal. Yeah, and what was happening with the QA in the parallel. So basically, yeah. So what QAs are doing? They are preparing that, like some test cases, test data, then also maybe do some test design. But those processes were completely parallel, not with almost no synchronization between each other. Yeah, and basically everyone was happy. I was happy because I was doing my job well, earning money for that, and that's it. The same for developers. Yeah, and yeah. So what could go really wrong with this? And then let's just imagine evolve the situation, and then just please no associations. And then QA organizes the meeting with the manager, with his boss, and says, "Hey, I've got so many tests now. I'm doing this manually. I'm doing really a monkey job, and repeating myself for each iteration." And basically, by that time he has already found out that, yeah, there are several tools for test automation. I don't know, some what was that popular sometimes, so maybe some from HP, some Silk Task or something like this. They were all enterprise tools, costed a lot of money. And then he was looking also into WebDriver, and say, yeah, WebDriver seems to be a really good opportunity, and it's for free. So let's try it out. Yeah, why not? It's as soon as it's for free, then why not? Let's do it. Yeah, and basically maybe with some tiny details, but that's probably the way Selenium got popular, honestly. And especially once they established the API of communication with the browser as a standard, that popularity became even more and wider. Yeah. Yeah, so and that was probably the best moment of QA's life. Yeah, I just remember myself like sitting with a coffee in front of a laptop. Yeah, finally someone clicks those buttons instead of me, and I can just relax, and that was really fun. Yeah, and I don't know, just another 5 sprints after, again there is a meeting, and you know that awkward feeling when you're not following really the changes from UI, from business side, and you're not you don't have really much time to fix all your tests. They are failing one by one. and it's you're setting up the meetings, trying to solve this issue, saying, hey guys, please help me with those tests, and the developers I don't know, looking very they're looking into those tests and say, oh no, this I don't want to see this anymore, and I don't know, it's like some crazy stuff for them. And there are basically several reasons for this, really. First of all, this QA he probably created some, I don't know, some test data was not created, and that test data was also created by Selenium test cases. Who creates test data for their tests by Selenium as well? Who did like this? Okay, that's good. Then who created their own frameworks on Selenium? Okay, very nice. Though I think this is the standard way of all QA automation QAs. Create a framework, really nice one. Then at some point, without the support from developers, it is not very stable, and then it is basically we're really hardly supported, unfortunately. And basically, you realize that you're basically stuck, and it's like you probably think of getting back to this very first thing and to try to remember your colleagues willing to become a I don't know, a Scrum Master. And basically, what should I do now? Should I just simply become a Scrum Master? Should I don't know, drop this stuff and stop creating automated tests? Yeah, and this is, yeah, that's the failure. And I also went through this failure partially, and I know how it is. And but what the positive you have, it's basically you have to treat this failure as an experience. And this experience is first of all is that you understand that the Selenium stops being popular in this situation, and your experience is also getting better because you are learning. You're learning more about HTML, about some selectors. You know that this page consists, I don't know, of a DOM model, and you know how communicate with this DOM. And so this is maybe some small knowledge, but this is anyway better than it was before. But the most important thing that you learn is really that it's a habit to automation. So instead of running those tests manually, you create and support it. So it's like a different mindset now, which you now have. And then you have to like what I at least did. I tried to evolve myself. So I started learning more, and basically that's, I don't know, that's maybe not of course the widest technological stack, but at least I learned that there are such things like web servers, yeah, how they work. That if I write my tests, I also have to follow some design patterns. Otherwise, they're not even, you can hardly support those tests. Then I learned how database servers works, and how ORM, what is ORM framework, and so on. And basically that, this my favorite type of testing when I was in my first company was a black box type. Yeah, it was black box testing. Really nice. It's like a old school. But this black box, after you learn this this black box stops being really that black. Yeah? And it's like you realize also that the user interface is not the only API which you can test. And it's like and basically the Selenium is also not the only way of testing, because you've got several APIs, and Selenium is only for UI. And then basically you are coming to the very important conclusion, is that you can write your tests and choose like and use the closest interface, where the closest feature interface, the closest interface where your feature is, And you probably saw this test pyramid already a lot of times, and there was I presented this topic on also on Selenium Camp in Kiev, and I was really lucky because I was the first one who was showing this, because after me, I mean, everyone, maybe every further speaker showed the same, and yeah, everyone really bored of because of it. Yeah, but a good thing is that it really follows that principle, and then you can design your test layers. You can slice your application by layers, and then design test cases and design tests according to those layers. That's, of course, that's not like a typical test pyramid. You probably may have another kind of pyramid. It really depends on the application, and yeah. So from my experience, in order to implement this approach, you have to really work close with developer, and you simply cannot do it on your own. So basically, let's try to sum up what you have to know and what you have to keep in your head while working with developer. Basically, you need to learn that you are not a developer. This is probably the most typical mistake of QAs who are starting working with production code, and they, yeah, I've got the power, I can do this, and instead you have to help the developer to develop a better code, so to say. Yeah, then sometimes, of course, you are really required to change production code. When I say production code in this case, I mean I'm also repeat myself, but I'm from Java world, and in Java you have like main context, yeah, production code, and the test context. And basically, if you have to sometimes make changes in main, yeah, but this has to go through really intensive review and from developers, and then be approved. Besides, you have to, when you are designing those tests, you have to check, you have to draw a kind of a responsibility line somewhere in between, and say that, yeah, I'm responsible, like a software developer or QA, responsible for this, for everything above that line, and developers are responsible for everything below. It doesn't mean that, that the QA or software developer in test cannot or is not allowed to write to develop unit tests. No, it's or vice versa. Developer cannot make automated GUI tests. No, it's not like that. It's just because it's more about an ownership. Yeah, that's probably the most popular problem of all the Selenium tests. And basically, there is a quite universal answer to this. And yeah, if you want to develop really trustable code and trustable tests, it's not only about tests, then you have to do it together. So you have to practice pair programming. So my first pair programming, for example, was more looking like, hey, just give me the keyboard, I do it myself. But this is just read about the pair programming practices first, and then try to use them. Yeah. Another thing is that you probably heard about this branch model hell, when your functionality is distributed in different branches, and when you are trying to put all this all together, it's all failing, and you are forgetting something. So it's also concerning tests. So if it is possible to keep your tests in one feature branch, then just do it. Yeah, and the least but not the last. Yeah, so basically that's basically, I'm quoting one of my colleagues, that code never lies. just involve QAs into code review. Try to, because they can also see that they are doing some test plan, and they can just simply look through the test cases and just say, hey, I'm doing the same. So you are testing the same thing I am testing. Let's do it together. Or what would be also good opportunities that I met a lot of developers who are doing the tests, unit tests, only for coverage, just to certify Sona. And probably the QA or software developer in test is really a good person to watch those changes and to try to handle that. Yeah. So we are slightly navigating to our practice part. Basically, this Selenium, the code is all on GitHub. If you want, it's really easy to find it on with the keyword Selenium Camp 2017 demo. Yeah. So I'm gonna switch to my application. So it's very simple application. I would say it's very stupid application. So it's there is a wallet with the $100, and what I can do, I just have $100, and I would like to see how much money do I have in different currencies. And then when I switch, if I switch a currency, then I can see that in different currencies the calculation. So how it works, very simple. There are there is a really easy second. Yeah. Okay. There's a really simple application. So there are two microservices which are exposing the like one is wallet service, one is currency service. What currency service is simply gives the list of currencies, and for example, when you can see the list this is here. So this is a simple UI which simply retrieves a list of currencies which you can get by this endpoint, and then you basically can get it there. Then there's also like once I click on, I select some option. There's also another endpoint is invoked, and then I can. It's basically calculating the like multiplying the rate which I'm getting also from a currency service by $100, and then I get the number. So how would I test this application? Because it's quite distributed, and it also presents quite a standard problem when you have like several external dependencies. Then you can which you can test in isolation, and you can test like an integration with one another, and basically I can just have to stop my application first. So I have several tests. For example, the entire calculation, which is mathematical multiplication, like 100 to a rate, I do, for example, in unit tests. And then when it comes to integration tests for the service itself, for example, for the wallet service, I do a integration test, which is in my case, wallet resource controller. T. And just let's go through the code a bit. So what it does here. So this wallet service depends on the currency service because he requires the rate. And I would like, but nevertheless, I would like to assume that currency service works really fine because it has their own tests. So I need to mock it somehow. So for mocking, I'm using the YMock. Did anybody work with the YMock? It's basically a tool which is mocking a service. It's kind of Makita, but you are mocking, you are wrapping not the class, but you are wrapping external service. So then you just can programmatically specify the responses you would like to see in your tests. And for example, in here, in my case, I can say that just create a stub for the service for the currency service endpoint, answer with the OK status, and just give the rate value. And here's the API for YMock. It's very simple. So I just say that given that if there's a request coming to this path, to a rate path with this content type, then answer with this request body. Of course, this is a very simple example. I could have built up an object like a JSON object, or I could have used some marshalling framework to build up the object itself, and then to construct the response. Or for example, this stuff can allows you to say that, how would your service behave in case the dependency service answers given a response within 3 seconds, for example, or something like this. Or it throws an exception, or provides some inconsistent body, or anything, or you might think of any cases like that. But I think is that you are isolating you're not involving the real currency service. You're not involving the real dependency. So this is what we have for the wallet service. Currency service tests are much more easy because it has any dependencies. And now we have the most popular question probably that would be, how then I do the end-to-end tests, and should I have the end-to-end tests? So the answer would be that for example, I don't need the currency service for UI testing. I also created the wallet user interface ID integration test. So what it does, it also sets up the stub for the rate service, and basically it simply it starts the PhantomJS, and this code you should guess it's it's a Selenium API. Who works with Selenium close? Okay, cool. Then it's really nice also to start and test UI tests in the same thread with an application, because then you are avoiding a lot of waiters problems, because then you don't require really to use waiters that much, because you have you're working in the same thread basically. And so from one perspective, we are testing. We are not testing we don't have end-to-end tests here at all. So we are not doing probably Selenium QAs QAs who are working with Selenium would do, who would just deploy everything and then do all their tests over UI. Instead, I say that yeah, user interface. I assume that user interface doesn't contain the logic, so all the logic is stored in the microservices, and there are tests for that logic is already there. And in order to test user interface, I just need to test basically a retrieval and the way user interface builds up the request to a server. That's basically the idea. So I can start the test cases. Yeah, so it should be quite fast. There are only 5 of them here. So it just starts the containers, the container for wallet service. So it's a very simple Spring Boot application. Then it starts the YMOC starts the Jetty on the background and basically configures the dependency, configures the wallet application to work with this mock, kind of. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is not supposed to run that long. Yeah. Setting accept. Okay. Yeah, this always happens. Let's try it. Yeah, so basically the idea now is that instead of having the test cases like the unit, the all end-to-end unit tests, I have like a pretty primitive pyramid. Yeah, this is my primitive design where I have like a 1 UI test, 4 integration tests, and 5 unit tests, and now I have this distribution. So this is a very small example, but which is illustrating what I was going to say. Yeah, now maybe sometimes the YMOC stacks if you are restarting the tests if you are restarting it for each test. So there's a solution for that, just to start it only once and then resetting it for each test. But yeah, in my example is quite simple. That's why sometimes it fails. So just let's jump back to presentation. Yeah. Moment. Yes, you probably have to go through it a bit. Yeah, so basically that was the model of an application, how it works and how it communicates with each other, like basically the design of the application. While I was creating all those tests, I was thinking like, yeah, okay, how does it work with TDD? Is there anybody here who is practicing TDD? Okay, you are really practicing TDD. Oh, cool. This is nice. And basically, let's just then remember what TDD is basically. So you have to write some small test, then which is fading. Then you're developing your production code until the test passes, then you refactor a bit, and then so on, so on, so on. But what's the principle of this? How fast should it be? Can it be long or no? So yeah, so basically it should be like 5 minutes iteration maximum, something, some kind of like this. And basically, so this principle is actual only for unit tests majorly. So if you're writing integration tests first and then if you try to do the same iterations with the integration tests or UI tests, then your iteration really becomes really long, and it doesn't work like that then, at least for me. Yeah, so let's now try to summarize who's and answer this question: who is software developer in test? And so, from my perspective, I think that that's the guy who really knows his system. That he's not this guy is not using really a black box testing type anymore. So he knows how this looks internally. Then he really follows this test pyramid principle. So he makes a design with a team, and he answers the question how I'm going to test this feature, and then uses those layers as a like a design for their tests. And basically, another thing is that I think you can consider your developer as tests if when you are really working close with developer and you create your tests, and you both really trust those tests. And this is possible only when you are when both developer and QA are working together. I was the one of the most popular question was, yeah, but what's really the difference between this guy and automation QA? And I think that it's automation QA is simply a guy who is automating the tests. So the tests are given to him, and that's it. This is probably the same. And I think that normally that if you find a description, job description for automation QA, the main tool they will be looking for is Selenium or some end-to-end testing tool, but not integration tests or knowledge of Java or something like this. And if you consider to find this person or I don't know, ask HR, your HR in your company, like, yeah, I want to have this kind of person in my team, that's probably could be a good description for this position. So it's not, of course, necessarily the there might be some adjustments, of course, but what I also would like to say that this person has to have also the QA background. It's not it should not be a developer who was never doing the testing stuff. Yeah. And what I also would like to say that, yeah, it's really nice position. It's really nice way for QAs who are, I don't know, who are don't want to become a Scrum Masters and or someone else, and this is just another way for evolving themselves. So now the Q&A session. Yeah, I saw some skeptical faces.
Yeah, but before, let's say thank you to you. Thanks a lot for a very good speech. And yes, let's try to switch to our Q&A session and use Tymofii to get as much as possible from him. If no one wanted to start, I still have questions in live stream, so I can start with them. No? Cool. So we have a question from our YouTube followers. Thanks a lot also to them for following us. The question is, can one person take the role of software development in test one day and the developer another day? I wonder how strict is the separation in the practice at Booxware or any other place you work?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So, for example, I was working in one team in Booxware, and there was like no separation about. There was no strict separation, and the developer was basically working with the QA in terms of, yeah, I've got this test suite, and we can just do it together. And there was no like really strict untitling in terms of this. Maybe in some teams it's not even needed, but if there is a QA who is willing to grow and who's willing to have a target for this, I think that's the case.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, looks like we cannot ask Stefan if he is satisfied with this answer or not, but yeah, we can continue for again his. And second question was, when he was talking about changing production code from software development test to engineering tests, was it meaning that changing production code to support test requirements, or?
Okay, so sometimes, when I say sometimes, I really meant quite not often. But sometimes there is a code which is not covered with tests, but it's already in production, and you would like to create a code. You find a bug or small issue or some misusage of dependencies, and then you have to adjust it anyhow. Then the long way is to create a bug, then to plan it, and blah blah blah. But yeah, I think the easier way could be that the adjustment just with the test. It doesn't mean that it's not the case. I know probably what the person who is asking means. It's not the case when you'd like to I don't know, create some method which is using only for testing. No, it's not. It should not be the case. It basically means that the design of a test is bad. Yeah.
Okay. One more question?
Yeah, one.
So, if you have software developer engineering test in your team, do developers write test code or only production code, or always pair is developer and software developer engineering test?
Basically, this is the way they just agree with each other. But and it also depends on how on a load within the sprint. From my experience, usually the best practice would be to do a pair programming, and then if there are really tests which are which you can do on your own without pair programming, then yeah, just create a task, and then whoever picks it up can do it. Yeah.
Cool. Other questions?
Yeah. I have a question. You just mentioned I saw the pyramid, and then there's a line. Define, okay, this part not strictly line, but this part mainly belongs to the developer, and other part belongs to the QA. So do you think it's good or bad to have to clear this kind of ownership? So to say, okay, developers responsible for this part. I know we can do the pair programming, but do we need to make a clear responsibility to say, okay, this part belongs to this one, this part belongs to that?
And could you maybe repeat the question for people watching, because they can't understand the question?
Ah, yeah, sure. So the question was that should we really cross the responsibility line for the test pyramid in order to explicitly specify that yes, developers are responsible for that, and QAs or software development tests are responsible for everything what is above. Correct? Okay. So from my point of view, no responsibility. If there is no strictest responsibility, then there is no responsibility at all. So you have to know who is responsible for it. Otherwise, no one is responsible. And that's basically the principle you have to follow basically everywhere. It's not only about tests or something else. And it simply means that if someone breaks a build, yeah, and this build contains unit tests, then yeah, theoretically, of course, theoretically, on practice, that can fix it. But I think developer has to take a look. Yeah, kind of.
Do you have the time to cover all the levels in the test pyramid? Because we also had like this operation, but mostly because like test automation or software developer in test didn't have the time to go to do unit tests and so on. We tried to pair, but rarely with the developers for unit tests and maybe component tests, but actually we don't have the time to do that.
Yeah, so it's basically depends on the way you plan. You're doing your planning. So you have to answer the simple question: how we are going to test this when you are planning for your user story. Assuming that you have some agile way of development. Yeah, and usually, and that was actually the case before. In like a usual distribution like QA developer, is that developer is doing something, yeah, and that within like fourth part of a sprint, and then in this last 1/4 of a sprint, he just moves all the responsibility to QA and says, "Hey, I'm done. Now it's your turn. Do it, test it, and then we'll see." Yeah. So it's not a teamwork. It's developer also the entire team is basically a delivery unit, and they have to plan ahead. Like if testing really, if it is a really critical part and you have to test it thoroughly, then you have to plan accordingly. Otherwise, if you sacrifice, then you got the risk.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
How was like, if you can answer this, what is like the software developer in test versus developer ratio in the team?
I would say, yeah. So the question was, what is the ratio between software developer in tests and developers? So I would say that the ratio should be. No, I think it's a same kind of question. What should be a ratio between QAs and software and developers? There is no answer for this, I think. It really depends on a software very much, but I think that the distribution you can try to follow the same distribution like you have with the QAs in your team, and then you'll see how it goes. So let's say team of 5-6 people, then you have to have 1 or 2 software development tests accordingly.
So, no questions. Thank you very much again. Yes, please.
Sometimes if we involve tester in our code, because I am a developer, I used to develop the code. When you ask me to test, I always go for positive test cases. So we are giving it to QA or testing team. Sometimes if I involve them also, what about that independent testing easier? And we usually have the testing team to have a third eye on our code. So in that case, how will we maintain the same if I involve them in my code?
Yeah, so the question was about, yeah, you're a developer. If you are a developer, then you are testing, you are not supposed to test, basically. or you don't know how to test, what then to do? Or
No, I do testing up to some level. Unit
Yes.
testing I do.
okay,
But not, if you ask me structural and functional testing, up to some extent I do. But from usability testing and like black box I won't. I will always see my code and do. But anything.
okay, then then the question is, you support the testing up to some certain level. So in your case, it's unit test, proper integration test, but nothing more. And then how would you then support the upper levels? But that's basically what the question you have to answer within your team. If you there is a there's always a risk when there's someone in a team who cannot do something and another team member, but another team member can. Then if we crisscross this team member, then nobody can do it anymore. So you have to share this knowledge as well. And this is basically where the pair programming for with it QA or software development tests comes into play, and then you can learn from each other. I think it's quite that. Yeah.
So, thanks again. We're trying to keep our promise, as we said last time, and I see some faces that I saw last time also. So, to keep our promise for future also, to keep going with new and awesome Booxware meetups, we really want to ask you to give us feedback, give us the heads up what was doing good, what was bad on your opinion, so we can work on it. And next one will be more awesome, and it will come. We again promise you. So yes, thanks again for coming. Thanks again for all our followers in YouTube, and thank you very much again, Tymofii, for doing this awesome meetup. Thank you.
Thank you.